right, and we are back again for another episode of the Young Millionaire in Training podcast. Yeah, season 3, episode 2, man. Um, I just want to say I appreciate everybody for reaching out to me, giving a lot of feedback on episode number 1, man, of season 3. My mental health episode, which a lot of this season is going to be focused around mental health. Um, Obviously still the financial stuff, but around mental health, just because that's what I have been dealing with. That's what I am dealing with. And so it's, yes, it's about the financial literacy piece, but it's also about me going through my personal journey and sharing that journey with you. So hopefully you can find things in my journey that can help you maybe skip that step or help you navigate through that step or get you to a next step or whatever the case may be. And that's just kind of what I'm doing here in the current situation. Okay. So first things first, season 3, episode 2. This episode is called Forgiveness is the Currency of Freedom. So, I mentioned the forgiveness in episode 1 about how forgiveness had been really big for me and really important to my personal situation with getting over my anxiety and depression, because I had no longer beat myself up behind things. I forgave myself for them, which means I could let them go, which means I didn't beat myself up about those things any longer. Okay. Now, this is where the problem comes. We've all, well, let me not say all, but most of us have heard of the concept of forgiveness or the reasons why we should forgive. But the thing that actually was so difficult for me, which is why I wanted to do a specific episode on this, was how to forgive. And why we even, or before we get into why and how, let me say that before we get into how to forgive, let's get into why to forgive. Like I said, we usually know, but everybody thinks about forgiveness from a religious standpoint, because the Bible says we should forgive. God wants us to forgive. Now, if you subscribe to religion or in the religion that you choose to subscribe to, it talks about forgiveness. Okay, that's great. That's your reason. However, there are people that don't subscribe to it. And in the context of my show, although I do subscribe to religion and I do it because the Bible said so, and God said so. However, when you don't forgive, because remember I said you start with yourself. When you don't forgive, you actually end up limiting your personal self the ability to move forward in other areas of your life, because you're still stuck wherever that point in your life was that you couldn't forgive. So I'm going to say that again. When you can't forgive yourself or others, but right now we're starting with ourselves. When you can't forgive yourself, you can't move forward in life because you're stuck at that point in which you chose not to forgive. Okay. Now, for instance, let's say you started a business. You were young, or you could have been old, who knows? But you were young. The business didn't go well, okay? The business didn't go well when you started it. But you started that business and you failed miserably. I mean, you failed miserably. Now, you learn from that experience, you learn from other experiences since then. Now you're getting this pull on the inside of you to start up another business, but you say, nah, been there, done that. I already know I'm not good at it. I already know I failed. Now, that could be partially true, but if you haven't forgiven yourself for failing on that business, you're missing your opportunity to use the lessons you learned the first time you failed to possibly open a successful business. That doesn't have anything to do with religion. If you have an opportunity to invest now, but you won't invest because you haven't forgiven yourself for losing money the first time. Okay? You following me? You have to forgive yourself or you get stuck at a point in time and you can't move forward because you're still trying to live in the future, but you're stuck in the past because that's as far as your forgiveness would take you. Now, because many people do think about it from a religious standpoint, I am going to touch on the religious standpoint first, and then we'll go into some of those other deeper pieces from a non-religious standpoint, okay? So, as I've told you all, I do practice Christianity. So when I say religious standpoint, I am going to come from the standpoint of Christianity on this, okay? Now, in reality, from that standpoint, forgiveness is a gift from God, okay? But it's also a gift you can give to yourself. So, I talked about in episode 1 about needing to forgive yourself. But how do you go back and forgive yourself because you dropped out of school and you didn't finish that degree? If you never forgave yourself for dropping out, how do you forgive yourself, like I said, for messing up on that business the first time? How do you become the best parent possible to your child when you haven't even forgiven yourself for who you chose to have a child with? How do you collaborate with peers or future business partners when you haven't forgiven your last partner that did you wrong? Like I said, you have to learn from those experiences. Okay, you have to learn from them. However, what is forgiveness? This is my personal definition. This is not the Webster definition. But for me, forgiveness is when a person can no longer activate, a person or a situation or whatever, but a person can no longer activate those your emotions in a negative way, no matter if that's anger or sadness. So just the mere speaking or you hearing someone's name should not invoke negative or should not make you angry. Somebody mentioned, I told you all, I had a situation where I had an exchange with a guy from 20 years ago in high school that I thought I had forgotten. And it made me angry over something that was 2 seconds long. And it's so dumb. Like, in case I just recap that, we were teenagers. The guy didn't want me to be in his car club after I had joined the car club. So he said, you're not really a part of us like that. And I was like, hey, well, you need to check with the guy who told me to join. That was the entirety of the exchange. Why am I mad about that 20 years later when I didn't even care to be a part of it like that anyway? It didn't change anything about my life, but because it activated that I am not enough, because I am enough, but because it activated that I am not enough core value in me, it stuck with me and I wasn't able to forgive. So that was one of the things that I had to forgive 20 years later. Almost 20 years later, not quite 20 years later. I was at least 16. So not quite 20 years later, but close to 20 years. It's been way longer than it should have been. Okay, let me say that. But me trying to figure out how to forgive was so difficult for me. So I'm going to share those steps with you. Like I said, I will share the religious steps first, and then we go into some non-religious steps just in case. Like I said, everybody has different beliefs. Just because I believe something, I don't automatically assume that everybody else does. I'm not going to run that down your throat. I'm not going to beat you over the head with it. If you want to believe how I believe, great. Feel free to engage me. We can have as much conversation as you want about it, and I'd be more than happy to share with you why I believe what I believe. However, even if you are not religious or you don't subscribe to the same belief system as I do, you still owe it to yourself to learn forgiveness, because that is the currency of mental freedom, okay? So in the religious context, if you look at Luke in the Bible, if you look at Luke 6:37 and 38, it says, forgive and you will be forgiven, for the measure you use will be measured back to you. Okay. Now, essentially what that means is if you want to be forgiven, or you want God to forgive you and you believe that he forgave you, then you need to forgive people at the same rate that you want to be forgiven. And however much you forgive people is how much God will forgive you. So essentially, forgive your debts as you want to be forgiven. Forgive others' debts as your debts were forgiven, okay? So if, let's say you owe me, there's actually a story in the Bible about this, but I'm going to paraphrase it. So let's say that you owe me $50, right? So I call you and I say, hey, you know what? Don't worry about the $50. Then let's say the guy down the street, let's call him John. John owes you $50. You call John up. After you hang up the phone with me, you like, hey, I got the $50. John's down the street, you see him pass by in your car, you call him, hey man, where my $50 at? I just remember you owe me $50. Keep the same energy. How can you expect somebody to forgive your debt and you're not willing to do that to someone else? That's very disingenuous. So that's what it's talking about when it says that you need to forgive at the same measure. If you're willing to forgive somebody 60%, God's only willing to forgive you 60%, okay? So that's the religious standpoint of it, okay? Now, when it comes to forgiving in non-religious ways, okay? So it still is the same concept, but first thing is actually recognizing what it was that someone did. And on top of recognizing what it was that they did, understanding exactly how it impacted you. So I talked about the emotional will and understanding your emotional intelligence and emotional, and also your emotional vocabulary and expanding that. So were you disappointed? Were you hurt? Or were you disappointed? Because disappointed can be a deeper level of hurt, or a deeper explanation. My feelings were hurt. Were you disappointed? Were you mad? Or did you set expectations? What happened that was wrong to you? Actually identifying exactly what it was that was wrong to you. Then once you identify what was done wrong to you or what you feel like was wrong to you, is then understanding and being able to put yourself in their shoes and see it from their perspective. Okay. So look at it from the perspective of the person who did you wrong. Let's say from the perspective of, a lot of times people have a hard time with their parents. Okay. Well, my mom or my dad, they did the best they could, but they just hurt me because they didn't teach me financial literacy, or they didn't teach me how credit worked. This is true. And you can hold that against them to a point, because why didn't they teach me? I needed to know. This is very true. However, let's look at it from their perspective. Did they know? Or were they just learning? Look at the totality of their lives. A lot of times they didn't even know. How can they be held accountable to teach you something that they didn't know? Forgive them for that, because they taught you a lot of good lessons. And then this is actually the other point, specifically with the credit that I've talked about before. A lot of times, although your parents didn't sit down and teach you the quote unquote credit system and teach you the different models and Equifax and Experian and TransUnion, although they didn't teach you those things, they actually taught you all of the concepts that allow you to have good credit. What I mean, your utilization. Hey, look, don't be biting off more than you can chew. Don't be using up everything that you get as soon as you get it, okay? Or the good old one, don't spend it all in one place, or don't spend it all. Keep some back, save some for a rainy day. A lot of our parents taught us these things. That's what utilization is talking about. Don't use up everything that you're given really, really quickly, knowing that you can't replace it as quickly as you used it up, okay? They taught you, pay your bills on time. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Plan ahead. Make a plan. They taught us these kind of things. Have a good credit mix. Your credit mix that goes into the formula. Hey, how about don't put all your eggs in one basket? Like, they taught us all of these concepts about it. Now, granted, it's up to you to kind of put it together, but it's a bit disingenuous just to act like they didn't somehow teach us all of the concepts just because they didn't go through it. So putting yourself in their shoes, sometimes you realize you need to forgive for those things, okay? So you have to forgive those parents. Or somebody's wronged you. Like somebody, you're at the club. Let's say you're at the club. Somebody steps on your shoe, literally putting yourself in their shoes. Somebody steps on your shoe, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry," but you get upset because they wronged you and they stepped on your shoe, not even thinking about, "Oh wow, it's a packed club. They probably didn't see me. I don't think they stepped on me on purpose." Yeah, they could have been more careful, but it's not like I've never walked through a club and stepped on somebody. So looking at it from the perspective of you. Also, the big thing that worked for me, understanding I am not perfect. It is so disingenuous to try to make it like you're perfect and nobody else is perfect. People are going to mess up. People are going to make mistakes. A lot of times, if you deal in a relationship with somebody or in a situation with somebody, a friendship, relationship, whatever it may be, long enough and intimately enough, there's going to come up something in which you're going to have to apologize for. Okay. You're going to do something wrong. They may do something wrong to you. Understand that you make mistakes. So the reason you start with forgiving yourself is not only so that you can move forward and learn how to forgive, but it's so that you understand that you too are not perfect. So stop holding other people to a level of perfection. Now, granted, there are some things that are seemingly unforgivable. Okay. So I'm not saying, somebody came in your house and, knock on wood, kidnapped your child. Lord forbid, kidnapped your child, where we just immediately going to forgive them right off the gate. I'm not saying that forgiveness is easy. It is not easy at all. I'm still going through the process of forgiving, even as I have discovered how freeing it is. Because the thing is, you never really get to know if you truly forgiven them or not until you're presented with the situation. You think you've forgiven that person until you hear the name and you still want to cringe your face up. You still want to make a face at it. You still feel some kind of way. Your heart start beating fast. You feel anger. So it's a process. So for me, it's just doing that daily affirmation. That's why I said it's good to identify who has hurt you and what they've done to hurt you. So me, hey, please help me forgive XYZ. Please help me forgive myself. I want to forgive myself for not finishing school the first time around, for not finishing college the first time around. I want to forgive myself for that. Help me forgive myself for that. Like you said, if you're religious, you pray to God or keep talking to yourself until you believe it. Whatever it is that works for you. So that forgiveness piece is so big for that, okay? The next portion of forgiveness that's really important that a lot of people miss, I think, is understanding that it's for you, not for the other person, okay? So those are your emotions, okay? Why would you want someone who is angry at you to have control over you? Imagine, let me take this. So let's say that y'all are just like super PO'd at me, okay? Super pissed off at me. And I know that, okay? Now, let's say you work at McDonald's, okay? You work at the cash register up front. I know you don't like me. You work at the cash register. So what do? I come in McDonald's every single day knowing you don't like me just to get on your nerves. You cannot give me that much power. It's all about the power structure. So that's why building that emotional intelligence, building that emotional vocabulary, and figuring out who it is that actually runs and controls your emotions. This is why you have to identify those emotions. I'm not going to allow this person to disappoint me. I understand that's sometimes easier said than done, but you do it little bit by little bit. You keep telling yourself the power of your mind is so strong. If you continuously tell it and believe it, it will do what you say at some point. Okay. So it's there. You know what? I know he's going to come in McDonald's. I'm just going to smile at him until the smile feels real. No matter what they say to me, I'm going to say back something nice. Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve it. That person may not deserve it, but I deserve it. I deserve to be in control of my emotions, because I frequently ask, do you have emotions, or do your emotions have a person? Okay. I have to go on that one again. Do you, the person, have emotions, or do the emotions own a person? Who's actually in control? Or is that other person in control of your emotions? Who's in control? You have to be in control. And the way that you control that, you tell that I'm not going to be disappointed today, no matter what anybody does to me, because I'm in control of my emotions. If I want to be happy today, I'm going to be happy today. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm not going to let anybody mess that up. Now, that actually rolls me to my next point, understanding boundaries. This is a really, really big one for me, about understanding boundaries, especially within the realm of forgiveness. So traditionally, I'm more of the, it ain't nothing to cut them off. It ain't nothing to cut that. Yeah, right. I'm more traditionally one of them people, okay? Like, once run me a foul, hey, I'm out of there. Get out of my face. Don't talk to me anymore. I'm gonna block you. Don't call me. I've traditionally been like that. However, in this season, I understand that in order for me to grow, I have to sometimes experience some of those things. So how do you deal with those emotions when it's a coworker that you can't just cut off because you still have to work with them? You can't get them fired. How do you control those emotions? Or how do you control those emotions when it's somebody who's going to be in your space and there's nothing that you can do about it? And the only way you can do those things are through practicing. Because I said you can't know if it's still impacting your emotions if it hasn't done what it is that trigger hasn't come up for you. Okay. So learning those things that you can do, whether it be breathing, whether it be meditating, whether it be counting, doing things to get your mind off of it, but setting those strong boundaries. So you can forgive someone, and that doesn't mean you just let them have that same access to you that they may have had that caused them to be able to hurt you the first time. Okay. What it more so means is you can love that person from a distance. You can keep them from a distance. Even with yourself, you can create healthy boundaries on what it is that you have to do. So for instance, if you happen to say you can't, that you like to snack, okay, and you're trying to forgive yourself because you can't control the way that you eat. When you go in the store, or if you shop like that, when you go in the store, order your groceries online, get them picked up. That's creating a healthy boundary. Yes, you might prefer going in, but you already know, hey, I'm gonna see them little Debbie's. I'm gonna have to pick some up if I see them, because I know they just gonna be good. I'm going in when I'm hungry because I ain't had a chance to eat. Like, creating those healthy boundaries, even with people. If it's people around you, let's say somebody comes in your house, they're a thief. Let's say you got a cousin, so we say it's family. You don't have to let them in your house. You wouldn't let them in your house, but there's a difference between walls and boundaries. Walls, and this is why this is important with the boundaries. Walls keep everybody in and out, and it also traps you inside. But those boundaries, you have the ability to push them and get out of them when you want to, whereas those walls will just hold you inside yourself. Okay. So create those healthy boundaries. Figure out what that is for you. That may be, hey, when they call me, or I'm not answering the phone because I know they're just going to be talking crazy. Hey, you can text me. It's your phone. You're allowed to do that if it saves you your peace. Okay. Nothing's more important to me right now than peace. So if it saves you your peace, you're allowed to do that. Okay. If you know that, sometimes I say, men or women, I say, hey, look, a lot of people will cheat if they're put into the correct situation. What you want to find is a person who knows to stay away from the correct situation that would cause them to cheat. For instance, if you're the type to get drunk, go out to the club, and go home with somebody, then you should probably stay away from getting drunk and going out to the club if you're in a serious monogamous relationship and you don't want to cheat or practice infidelity. Okay. And that's some of the kind of things that I'm getting at when it comes to creating those healthy boundaries for it. And boundaries doesn't mean that you hate people. It doesn't mean that you wish bad on them. It doesn't mean any of those things. And that's kind of bringing me to my last point here about the forgiveness piece. Let karma, let God, let whoever, the universe, whoever you want to say, let them worry about the revenge. Okay. You trying to get revenge is not going to do anything but push you deeper. And I know you want to see those people hurt. I know you want to see them suffer just like you suffered. You want to see them feel what you feel and worse. But the thing is, we all know two wrongs don't make a right. And in order for you to deserve forgiveness for something and stopping the cycle, have that cycle stop there with you. Yes, they hurt you, but we don't want to create a cycle of hurt. Okay. You hurt them, you need to forgive them for it, but you didn't forgive them, so you hurt them back. Now they need to forgive you for hurting them, and you like, well, I'm not forgiving them for hurting me. They hurt me after I hurt them, and I can hurt them worse. And now you're in this cycle. You have to stop the cycles. Okay, because now you don't trust people. Now you can't get a business partner because you don't trust people. Now you're not willing to invest because somebody might steal your money because somebody stole your money one time before. Stop trying to get people back, okay? Don't try to get people back when they do it. And I know that's much easier said than done because I'm super competitive. I'm like, hey, you come at me, I'm a one-up you. Like, I've traditionally been like that. However, just because of this new mission that I'm on the path that I'm on, I don't have time to deal with me trying to get people back because at the end of the day, none of us are perfect, and hurt people hurt people. Okay, I said that in the first episode. Hurt people will hurt other people. That person probably has some trauma in their lives. Put yourself in their shoes. That person has gone through things that caused them to behave the way in which they did. Put yourself in their shoes. So not to say that you can't draw those boundaries, because sometimes you do have to cut people off, but draw those healthy boundaries and be that light, be that positivity in their life. Show them the correct way in which you behave. You be in control of your emotions. Don't allow them to control your emotions. And that's why it's talking about when it says kill them with kindness, or you remain kind, because what it essentially does is a lot of people love control, and it allows them to know that they're not in control of me. When you can do and say anything to me and I can smile. Now, not that I just want you, I'm not saying just let anybody disrespect you or just walk up to you and smack you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying within the realm of this, you're not allowed to control my emotions. I control my emotions. If I want to show anger, it'll be because I want to, not because you pull that out of me. Okay? So, look, this was episode 2. Cool. Make sure you follow us on social media. We're going to start having some guests up here real soon. And we're still going to be digging into this mental health thing real heavy. I'm going to start talking about cognitive distortions next. Okay. The next one will be black and white cognitive distortion. That one's going to be good. As I kind of was going through and suffering from different cognitive distortions, I'm going to share my journey with you. Like I said, I know it's, once again, just hang in here with me. I know you're used to the financial literacy, and I know you're like, what does that have to do with it? But ultimately, even for me, I found that the financial literacy was not as important to me when I couldn't sleep at night, when I couldn't eat, when I didn't have any peace. In order for you to be the best version of yourself, you need to start at a content and peaceful place in your life so that you can think clearly. And when you have all these big goals and all these big ambitions like I have, you need every piece of brain power working in a positive way so that you can accomplish them. Okay. With that being said, once again, it's your man Warren G. Make sure you follow us at the_YMIT_podcast on Instagram. Make sure you catch us on TikTok, catch us on Facebook, The Young Millionaire in Training. And if you need anything, feel free to hit me up. I'll be more than happy to talk about any of this stuff a little bit more in depth. Until then, y'all be good, and much love and much peace to everybody. Bye-bye.